The paintwork of this car is of good quality, thanks to which even in the first copies the paint confidently adheres to the body. However, you need to understand that the car is no longer new and the presence of minor damage, chips, scratches on it is the norm. But their complete absence should alert. Of the problem areas, it is worth highlighting the wheel arches, paint may swell, and the rear part of the thresholds. The paintwork is wiped at the points of contact with the plastic lining. Good quality and body iron, however, withstand proper care and there may be problems with it. Most often, rust breaks through from under the seals and windshield frame. The hood, roof edge, and parts restored after an accident are also subject to corrosion. On the bottom of the car, rust appears most quickly on protruding brackets, wheels, exhaust system fasteners, and suspensions. In hybrid, the front and rear suspension cups are subject to corrosion. Chrome plate parts painfully endures winter operation. After 3-5 winters, they lose their marketable appearance, cloudy, peeling. Among the problematic ones are the seals of the rails and the tailgate, through which moisture penetrates into the cabin over time. The seam sealant of the rear pillars does not differ in reliability either, it dries up. Also, the appearance of water in the cabin can be caused by contamination of the hatch, drain tube, and leaks in the fluid supply hose to the rear window washer. The current sealing not only spoils the appearance of the skin, but it can also cause rust in the cabin. The trunk lid is also considered problematic, in which the lock and glass stops eventually become unusable. The electric door drive may also require attention. If the lock malfunctions and is repeatedly used, its wear is accelerated. Another disadvantage is the small resource of the rear wiper drive, which is after 100–150,000 kilometers. There are also complaints about the reliability of the front optics. The protective plastic becomes cloudy, the mount breaks and the seams are depressurized, the headlight starts to sweat. The plastic reflector of the lenses is also of mediocre quality. It loses its reflective coating, burns out. As a result, the quality of the light beam decreases. It is difficult to call long levers and fog lights installed in the bumper. The mount breaks, creak when wet. In hybrid versions, the position lamp, LEDs, and the optic control board often fail, prone to corrosion. The windshield is quite soft and, moreover, painfully tolerates temperature changes, cracks. Buying original glass is not cheap, especially if it has an IR filter. Many people take Chinese analog to save money, but this decision is controversial, since when using them, the rain sensor and heating may not work. The front wiper trapezoid needs periodic lubrication with complete disassembly. If you carry out a quick service using WD-40, an expensive repair will not take long, the bushings will rust. In our market, the Lexus RX II was presented only with gasoline engines, RX 300 3.0 to 104 horsepower, RX 330 3.3 to 133 horsepower, RX 350 3.5 to 176 horsepower, RX 400h hybrid 3.3 to 110 and 270 horsepower. All motors are quite reliable and with proper maintenance can do without repair 300–350,000 kilometers. However, many owners of this model, knowing about the reliability of Toyota engines, do not always pay enough attention to them. The main reasons for the early failure of the internal combustion engines are the use of low-quality oils, aggressive operation, overheating and malfunctions of power systems. The most vulnerable point of the motors is the cooling system, in which the radiator, thermostat, flow, and the cooling pump are supplied. To replace the radiator, it is better to take a Chinese analog, since it has a material that is more resistant to reagents. When using low-quality gasoline, the life of the catalyst is significantly reduced, it dusts into the cylinders when destroyed and lambda sensors. RX 300 and RX 330. On pre-styling cars, units of the MZ series 1MZ-FE and 3MZ-FE were installed. A timing belt is used in the timing drive. If it breaks in 99% of cases, the pistons hit the valve, so you should not tighten it with its replacement. It lasts 90–100,000 kilometers. In addition, it is necessary to monitor the tightness of the internal combustion engine, since in the event of leakage of the valve cover gasket and oil seals, oil gets on the belt and significantly reduces its service life. Can reduce the life of the belt and phase shifter valves, so you need to monitor their condition. Another disadvantage is the tendency of engine to detonate. Most often, this ailment manifests itself in cars whose owners save on gasoline and spark plugs. This trouble is aggravated by the unreliability of the NOx sensors. There are also complaints of the reliability of the VVTi phase regulator valve, in the event of a malfunction of which the motor will triple. Among other shortcomings, it is worth highlighting the tendency of the throttle valve and the ventilation system to cocking, manifested by unstable idling. It can throw a headache at the wiring of the nozzles, which eventually begins to climb, is in the collapse of the block, which complicates the repair. Cars with mileage of 200,000 plus have a progressive oil burner. RX 350. The pre-styled Lexus RX was equipped with a 2GR-FE engine with a timing chain drive. Depending on driving style, the chain lasts 150 to 150,000 kilometers, and an improved control system. The most troublesome things in this internal combustion engine was the oil line, in which, after 50,000 kilometers, the rubber tube of the high-pressure oil cooler was pierced and the engine remained without lubrication in a matter of minutes. To fix this nuisance, the manufacturer released an improved part 15772-31030 and launched a recall campaign. When choosing a Lexus RX II on the secondary market, pay attention to this, since grey cars might not have received a warranty repair of a defect. Another significant ailment of the internal combustion engine is the problem of the first and fifth cylinders, which received the name PPC from the owners. This ailment is caused by an unsuccessful intake design, through which raw dust enters the cylinder and kills the intake valves, forms scuffs, and can destroy the compression ring. As you already understood, frequent walks on country roads are detrimental to this motor. The throttle assembly is prone to cocking, and if it is significantly contaminated, the power decreases and the idle speed flows. Often the pump and the couplings of the phase shifter fail, in the event of a malfunction of which the noise of the motor increases. They require replacement every 60 to 80,000 kilometers. On older cars, in the warm season, it is better not to use low-viscosity oil, since their use is fraught with turning the crankshaft liner. RX 400h. Hybrid Lexus RX II is not a frequent guest on our market, but it is for the best, since buying such a car older than 10 years is a dubious undertaking. Firstly, batteries do not last forever, and replacing them is not a cheap pleasure. Secondly, for such missions, in addition to the mechanical part of the engine, the hybrid control electronics causes problems. But if you still decide to buy a hybrid, be sure to carry out a complete diagnosis of car systems in specialized service stations. For Lexus RX II, only the 5-speed automatic transmission ASIN 95-51LS U151F/E is available, but with different control units. Hybrid versions were equipped with an electromechanical e-CVT variator, which does not have complex hydraulics, and most of the load goes to the electronics. The machine is reliable and with proper maintenance will not bother with significant breakdowns up to 200,000 kilometers. Most of the complaints about the gearbox are caused by the presence of jerks, bumps when shifting gears. To eliminate the disease, service station employees suggest changing the oil and refilling the firmware of the control unit, but this is a temporary solution, since the problem often lies in the motor. The MAF is clogged, the throttle is clogged, or its sensor is faulty. Among the shortcomings of the machine, it is worth highlighting the weak oil seals of the oil pump and axle shafts, as well as the front gear cover. Under heavy loads, the planetary gear, the bearing and the rear cover of the box and the O-ring quickly give up. For machines with high mileage, in order to avoid problems with the mechanical part of the machine, you should periodically check the condition of the loaded solenoids SL1, SL2, SL3 and change if necessary. In pre-styling cars, the valve body does not cope well with high temperature loads and is more sensitive to oil cleanliness. 4-wheel drive. Most Lexus RX II presented on the secondary market are endowed with all-wheel drive, which is implemented using a traditional central differential and viscose coupling. If you don't fool yourself that this is an off-road vehicle capable of overcoming deep fords and snow-covered fields, there should be no significant problems with the drive. After 100,000 km of run, an intermediate support may require attention. When worn, the cardan shaft breaks, therefore it is better not to tighten it with its replacement. Symptoms: vibrations appear at the start. Also, do not forget to periodically change the lubricant every 40,000 km in the gearbox and transfer case. This will help them to last longer. Simultaneously with the oil, it is recommended to change the transfer case, breather, and check the anthers of the CV joint. The car is equipped with an independent suspension. McPherson struts are installed in front, multi-link in the back. In simple configurations, a spring suspension was installed, but for the top versions, air suspension was available, with the ability to adjust the clearances from 155 to 210 mm. The chassis is quite comfortable and does not often bother with breakdowns. The weak points of the Lexus RX suspension can only be attributed to the struts and bushings of the stabilizers. The resource is 40,000 to 80,000 km. Shock absorbers and thrust bearings with medium loads leave 100,000 to 150,000 km. About the same lack of wheel bearings and silent blocks of the front levers. Ball joints under moderate loads can last up to 200,000 km. The parts of the rear suspension are also rarely bothered by breakdowns. The rubber bands of the rods take care of about 120,000 km, and the floating silent blocks can last up to 150,000 km. Also, problems can be added by the tendency of fasteners to corrosion and soured bolts of the brake-up levers. But air suspension can cause significant repair costs. Pneuma cylinders, as a rule, surrender after 100,000 km, poison the air. If they are not changed immediately, the cost of one rack is $5,700. The compressor will work without stopping, which negatively affects its resource. The cost of the original is $1,500. While maintaining the integrity of the cylinders and periodic maintenance, replacing the lubricant, oil filter and system dryer, the compressor will last 200 to 150,000 kilometers. Wiring and body position sensors do not differ in standard reliability. In the steering, a rack and pinion mechanism with power steering is used for the EUR hybrid. The rail here is quite weak and requires attention on a run of 100–150,000 kilometers, knocking, flowing. Fortunately, this unit is maintainable, but you should not count on a cheap solution to the problem. But the power steering, as a rule, does not bother with breakdowns. There are no complaints about the steering consumables. The tips serve about 150,000 kilometers and thrust up to 250,000 kilometers. Among the shortcomings of the brake system, weak brake discs can be distinguished, which with active braking quickly overheat and lose their geometry. Replacing standard discs with ventilated ones helps to eliminate this disadvantage. Require attention and calipers in which seals and guides fail. In the interior of the Lexus RX II, only high-quality finishing materials are used, which are not amenable to aging for a long time. Only the steering wheel and gearshift lever can give out the real mileage of a car, but as a rule, they are refreshed before selling. There are no problems with the restoration of the seat upholstery. Among the shortcomings here, it is worth highlighting the presence of crickets, which fill the interior over the years. The solution to the problem is to write the installation of additional vibration and sound insulation. It should be noted that the execution of the robot requires special care, since the clips of the fasteners of the parts and break without much difficulty. To eliminate squeaks coming from under the dashboard, it is enough to install an additional seal between the windshield and the panel. Also, the servo drive of the climate control dampers, there are 4 of them, can serve as a source of extraneous sounds. Treatment, updating the lubrication of brushes and drive gears. If it does not help, you will have to change the drive. Despite the use of a large amount of electronics, it does not cause much trouble. Of the main problem areas, it is worth highlighting a small resource of the air conditioning compressor, the replacement of which will cost $600–800. On older cars, additional costs require an electric drive of the steering column. The gearbox wears out. After replacing the battery, the power windows may not work properly. To eliminate the trouble, you must visit the service to adapt the control unit. In a multimedia system, a CD changer most often fails, failure in which can lead to a failure of the player. In hybrid versions, failures in electronics happens much more often, and their elimination will require a specialized service and considerable investments. Most often, the power steering, electric drive, air conditioning, vacuum pump, traction batteries, contacts are oxidized, and inverter require attention. We have to admit that the Lexus RX II, despite its impressive age, breaks down infrequently, but if something goes wrong, you will have to part with a tidy sum. When choosing a car on the secondary, check the complete set by VIN, check the presence of all the plates, look the traces of interference in the welds and the presence of non-factory rivets, since auto thieves love this model very much. If you are the owner of this car model, please describe the problems that you had to face during the operation of the car. Perhaps it is your review that will help readers of our site when choosing a car.